Mike, welcome back. And I think Brett is with us. So it's 6:30 in California. Roll into it.
Thank you. Good morning. Brett Root, president of IMCA, is with us this morning, and we're going to talk about dirt track racing. One of the country's largest sanctioning bodies of dirt track racing. Brett leads and has for quite some time now. Tell us a little bit about IMCA, Brett. How many racers, how many tracks, so on and so forth.
First off, good morning, Mike. Good morning to the panelists, and thanks for the opportunity to participate this week. I do appreciate the opportunity to talk about IMCA. Wow. Yeah, as far as about IMCA, this year we had about 9,300 IMCA racers turning laps at dirt tracks across the United States. We'll do business in 40 of those states and Canada at about 250 racetracks. It keeps us pretty busy. We'll usually sanction about somewhere between 5,500 and 6,000 races every year.
That's an incredible amount of racing in what is it, 8 divisions, 7 divisions, something like that?
Nine division race cars.
I was in the ballpark.
Yeah, you were close. It's primarily full-size race cars, anything from a sport compact or a 4-cylinder that the competitors could take off the street and convert to a race car, up to a full-blown late model or sprint car that's built specifically for, obviously, dirt track racing.
So you guys pretty much race year-round nowadays, but let's start out a little bit by looking back to the 2023 season. And what was your biggest takeaway from how that season went?
Oh, wow. Our biggest takeaway, I would say dirt track racing is alive and well. That's probably our biggest takeaway. I think, like all forms of motorsports, we have our challenges that we face every year. But this year, with the amount of events that we're doing, the amount of competitors that we have, the age of a lot of our champions, all of that tells a pretty good story for dirt track racing.
Where did you see the biggest growth last year?
We continue to see growth primarily within the tracks that we do business with already. Again, with nine divisions of race cars, our modified division is probably what our calling card is. Most people are familiarize IMCA with the modified. That is a division that was started by this association in the mid-'70s. And it continues to be our largest division of cars by far. But we see growth. We've expanded through different divisions. We've added a mod light division 3 years ago, which is like a 5/8 scale car and uses a motorcycle engine, which is unique to our association. And we see a lot of growth in that division. We see a little growth in the Race Saver sprint car division that we do business with as well across the United States. But for us, at the end of the day, most our growth is coming from a facility that's sanctioned IMCA modifieds for 30 years, 20 years. We have some tracks that have sanctioned for almost 40 years. And we're seeing them add other divisions now. They see the struggles of developing a division of race car, making it grow, getting the competitors, all those kinds of things that come in play with starting divisions. And they see the benefits of what we have to offer in other divisions. And so they're converting divisions or adding divisions at their local speedway.
One of the main objectives of IMCA is to make racing affordable. How do you strike the balance between that and still producing professional racing, particularly in the modified class?
It's tough because for us, no change in the rules has proven year over year to be the most cost-effective and smartest thing we could do for our competitors. But that doesn't have a sexiness, so to speak. When we're looking at the new technology that's introduced into the sport year in and year out, and a lot of it or some of it we don't allow, You know, it can be a little bit of challenge for the competitors to feel like we're doing stuff that's cool and in their best interest when, you know, they give us a call and say, hey, can we use this new part? And we say no. You know, so there's a fine line there between letting the divisions evolve over time to where they stay relevant and the racers themselves enjoy competing with them, and the race fans enjoy watching them. There's a fine line there between that evolution and then not allowing some of it because it goes in a direction that is not in the best interest of the division or the racers or the competitors. It's tough.
One of the things we hear a lot about in all across the board in motorsports, and you touched on it a little bit ago, is youth. Talk a little bit about the youth movement in IMCA racing.
Yeah, you know, I started IMCA. I started working here in 1997. I was 25. And I felt like I was the youngest guy in the room when I went to a lot of the trade shows from an employee standpoint, you know. And now I'm turning 52 in a couple of months, and you know, I go to races and I see kids that could, you know, obviously be my kids. My oldest daughter's 25. So it's interesting to see that transition, so to speak, from generation to generation. And it's one of the important things that we try to focus on in IMCA when we don't change our rules, is allowing a guy that maybe is getting out of the sport, and they do get out of the sport in and out quite frequently, more frequently than I think most people realize. You know, about 20% of our membership every year rotates for whatever reason, whether it be relocation, changing jobs,
Budget, job conflicts.
Oh yeah, so many things that are outside the control of just us writing race car rules: divorces, marriages, children, all those kinds of things. So it's important for us to keep the rules where they're at, because I think it allows the transition of those cars to the next generation a little bit more easier in an affordable way. And for us, you know, we're seeing that. You know, at the end of the day, the IMCA racers, and the vast majority of them, they migrate to what they can afford. We're not professional racing league here, to be quite honest. We're a hobby racing, you know, average people who have jobs. They're not professional racers. They're not trying to earn a living turning laps in IMCA. So, you know, we do our best to try to make sure that the younger generation can afford the race cars, or their parents can afford the race car, depending on what age they get in. And we see that we a few years ago, we developed a junior national championship award, where we actually recognize racers that are 17 and under. And it's been wildly popular. It kind of surprised me, to be quite honest, because a lot of times you'll hear people say that, you know, racing is struggling, and racing, there's no young racers in the sport and things like that, or young people can't afford it. And we see signs of the opposite. But they do migrate very much so to the race cars they can afford. You know, for us, that's sport compacts, front wheel drives, hobby stocks, very limited divisions when it comes to the components they can use on the car. And you know, I think we had 400 17 or younger participants this year alone in our junior national championship. So, you know, there's some positive signs out there, and that's just the junior national championship. Those kids are still competing against adults on the racetrack. They're not separated in any way. They're competing against guys that could race cars for 40 years or 30 years. In all of our divisions, we allow the 17-year-old, the 14 to 17-year-old kid to race. So we see them peppered throughout our sport, and we see them doing so very successfully, to be quite honest.
How much progression up the ladder do you see? Like, because a guy might start out in sport compacts and make his way through stock cars and eventually run modifieds.
We see that. We usually see it per division. We kind of have divisions that we like to connect, if
Sure.
so to speak. You know, we connect our hobby stocks to our stock cars because they're full fendered race cars. We connect our sport mods
with the mods, yeah.
to our mods, correct? Because, you know, they're very similar in nature, and people can take those. People can take those components with them if they switch divisions. So, you know, we see the racer migrate out of those when they see fit. You know, a lot of times it has to do with experience. Sometimes it has to do with, you know, the opportunity they have to race the car. Because again, we have more modified sanctions than we do sport mods, although they're very similar anymore. So a local guy starts in a sport mod because he can get a used one, get entry, you know, the point of entry to the sport is relatively low in that division, or lower because it's limited. And they'll race it for a year or two, and then they'll jump into modifieds. We see that quite common, to be quite honest. I think our rookie of the year this year in our late model division, if I remember correctly, Cade Richards is his name. He was a rookie of the year a few years back in the sport mods, rookie of the year a few years back, I believe, in the stock cars, and then a rookie of the year this year in the late model. So they're jumping around. They're jumping around to what they want to race at the end of the day. And I think all of our racers, they start as hobby racers, but I think a lot of them have the ambition to race professionally. You know, we definitely see that and hear that, you know, and there's a lot of times I think our racers want to race in NASCAR. That's in the United States, in my opinion, when it relates to IMCA racing, NASCAR and professional racing at that level is probably where most of our competitors say they want to land. You know, some of them want to go into Indy racing and stuff like that, but most of them want to go cup racing at the end of the day, which is pavement racing. So it's a little different, you know, I mean, there's a lot of obstacles for them to do that, but we still have racers too, that they just want to be professional dirt racers, and that opportunity presents itself as well and within the industry. So, you know, they want to race a super late model or a 410 sprint car or something of that nature, which is something we don't necessarily offer in IMCA.
IMCA.TV is an important ally of the Speed Sport Network. And how important is streaming video to the IMCA business model?
That's an interesting question, because you go back maybe 10 years ago, maybe a dozen years ago, when streaming was in its infancy I think for everybody.
Sure.
You know, we were struggling to expose our sport, struggling to expose IMCA. You know, we had done some stuff with our largest event, the Super Nationals. We bought air times and had a production team come in and paid to have the show on television as best we possibly could, but it was expensive for us to do that. The streaming has somewhat flipped that, to be quite honest. You know, we've got a great relationship with Speed Sport, with Joe, with Chris Grainer and Rivet, and the relationship that they have. And we have seen streaming do exactly for us what we thought TV would do, and that is expose our market to more eyes, to more viewers. And it's been incredibly beneficial. I think we see events, and I use the Super Nationals as the best example, because that's an event that we're directly associated with from a promotional standpoint. We see that event break records for attendance the last 3 years from a participant standpoint. And when you have that many competitors at an event, it's just you see the result of that, people outside of the event that want to watch it on a stream. And, you know, we see it all across the United States that week during the Super Nationals. So streaming has become very, very important to the exposure that we get as an association, that our racers get by turning laps in our association, and by our promoters and events and the 250 tracks we're doing business with, that they get from race fans across the United States.
Have there been any results of streaming that have surprised you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Benefited your business that you didn't expect?
Yeah, it's interesting to me because, again, because of the platform and the way it's structured, we get the metrics of all of it. We know who's watching, which is very important to us. So we're able to draw conclusions from that. And I use Boone Speedway as an example, again, because I'm a little bit more active at that facility than I am at a normal facility that we're sanctioning. And you see people in Arizona in California and Oregon and Washington, watching Boone Speedway's weekly show on a Saturday night in central Iowa. You know, it's crazy. Yeah, I probably wouldn't have necessarily anticipated that happening, but when you look at the areas that they're watching from too, there's usually an IMCA track or a dirt track or something in that area. So the fan has the connection to our type of sport, and they want to watch what they want to watch, you know, and we present that at places like Boone and Southern Oklahoma Speedway and Nodak Speedway and Minot and there Mandan, and there's just all kinds of that opportunity. So it's really interesting to see where the fans come from and what they want to watch.
You've mentioned the Super Nationals. How do you describe that event to someone who doesn't know much about it?
It organized chaos on our end of it. You know, the Super Nationals for us, and I've said this for years, the Super Nationals is basically like a snapshot of IMCA weekly racing across the United States. You know, the success of the Super Nationals is directly related to the success of our association and the popularity of our association all across the 40 states we do business at. You know, so it's the reason why, in my opinion, you see us get the last 3 years we've broke records on our attendance. We had 909 race cars in 2021. We had 1,001 race cars in 2022, and we had 1,017 race cars this year in 2023. And that's just at Boone Speedway, racing for 8 straight days, basically, of dirt track racing. So if you're a fan of dirt track racing, if you like dirt track racing, you know, and again, the stream has provided us the opportunity to somewhat present that to people that have never been to Boone, may never have considered going to Boone, and maybe not even know much about IMCA racing. It's somewhat presented us the opportunity to expose them to that, and we've just seen it explode the last 3 years, especially. And I do think there's a direct relationship there between our streaming efforts, the quality of our stream, the quality of our production, and the attendance from the competitor standpoint. They want to be on TV, and to them, the stream that we're producing is about as close as they can get. So they come to Super Nationals for exposure. Their sponsors come for exposure. Their sponsors help fund them coming to Boone, because it's not inexpensive for them to go drive across the United States just to turn laps at a quarter-mile dirt track in Boone. But it also it presents the opportunity for us to kind of showcase our divisions, and I think it's proven to do that in the last few years, especially.
The date of the Super Nationals, if anyone was wondering, starts Labor Day weekend and runs for a week after that. So it's a perfect end of the summer, beginning of the fall event, and it's kind of, you know, the crowning moment of the IMCA season.
It is. In dirt track racing for many, many years, you go back about the time I started working at IMCA, and the season was, generally speaking, Memorial Day weekend to Labor Day weekend. That's when racing started and stopped. And for years it was like that. So our Super Nationals used to start on the weekend after Labor Day. I mean, that's why it was that weekend. People ask that, why is it on that weekend? And that's why. But now, because of our growth across the United States and the numerous divisions that we do business in now, instead of 1, we have 9, and we run most of them, I think all but 2 of them at the Super Nationals. It's forced us to somewhat move that event forward to accommodate the competitors that are coming. So it's creeped up to where now it starts on Labor Day. And again, that's kind of a snapshot, a little bit of weekly racing and the problems it's somewhat caused for us. You know, our racing doesn't start on Memorial Day anymore. It starts January 1st.
Yeah.
So we'll start racing IMCA down in the southwest part of the United States, you know, as the first of the year. It's not unusual for us to have a race on January 1st. And we race all the way up through. We were racing Thanksgiving weekend down there as well in Phoenix at the dirt track down there at Casa Grande. So Labor Day is when the Super National starts, and it's always going to start on that Labor Day weekend. So it's easy to kind of remember if you're a race fan. Yeah, it floats a little bit on what those days are exactly in September, but it always starts on Labor Day, and that's generally why. But the racing for us is not over, unfortunately. It's not over, or fortunately. It's not over on that after Super Nationals. We still have usually 2 or 3 weekends of point racing through the end of September to get to our national championships in all of our divisions. And then the month of October and November, we roll into what we call specials, and they're just peppered all across the United States.
Super National is no doubt the biggest IMCA event, but over the last few years, a lot more significant races have popped up. One of those you alluded to racing in January, the Winter Nationals at Kokopah are coming up. Tell people a little bit about that event and what it's added to the IMCA landscape.
It much like Super Nationals, it's got a Super Nationals feel to it. Many, it races multiple days. There's a couple of days where there's a few days off. And it floats a little bit in January as to when it starts and stops. But Kokopah for us is, it's been good because it presents the opportunity for, especially us up here in the northern climates. IMCA is located in Vinton, Iowa, which is eastern Iowa. So right now, I think it's forecasted to snow sometime today. So anything in this area, really mostly through the month of March is, we can't race. So Kokopah has provided the opportunity for those who want to be snowbirds or are snowbirds. And a lot of the guys up in this area who want to compete and get out of the snow and the cold weather in January, they head down to Kokopah, and we usually get 250 to 300 race cars down there, across a variety of divisions that we run at Kokopah. And they come from all over the United States. It's kind of crazy. It's not unusual for us to see guys from Wisconsin and Minnesota and North Dakota and even in Canada down at Kokopah in January, and again, our widespread appeal across the United States where we're at, it just lends for these types of situations to happen. And when they do happen, they happen on a little bit grander scale than just a normal weekly show at a racetrack that maybe doesn't sanction with an association like IMCA.
That event is streamed on imca.tv, and all the people sitting in the snow in the middle of January can watch it. So that has to be a benefit as well. We hear all the time that motorsports is a family sport. That's especially true with IMCA, isn't that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Kind of like I had mentioned earlier, at our national banquet, we've got guys that, like Mike Nichols, that have raced and won 12 national championships. And then we've got guys like Mike Nichols that have quit racing and now their kids race. And so we're starting to see them pop up into racing. So I think racing, as much as any sport, has a very family atmosphere when it comes to the traditions that our racers have. It's not unusual for the younger competitors in IMCA to have parents that raced in IMCA as well. So that's good. We're proud of that. We love to see that. It's one of the goals of our association is to be able to continue to keep dirt track racing relevant and interesting and available to any family who wants to participate in it. It's really a lifestyle for most of our racers. They're, instead of camping and instead of boating or doing something that with their extra money, they want to go racing. They take vacations at racetracks. They come to the Super Nationals for vacation. They go to Kokopah for vacation. They bring their kids, their families, and it's a very addicting sport. And I think most motorsports are like that, but IMCA is no different. Once you get dirt track racing into your system, it's very, very hard to get it out.
Let's take that family connection, and as we wind down here, end it on a little bit of a personal note. It's a family connection that's kind of led to your background and leading you to this position of leading IMCA.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mother, to be quite honest. My mother was Keith Knack's, who's the founder of the IMCA Modified. She was Keith Knack's first full-time employee in the mid-70s. She bought IMCA from Keith's widow, Catherine Knack, in 1995. And when she did that, I was a senior in college. I was just graduating. I was going to school for NC programming and robotics. Had a little bit of a mechanical background. I worked as a mechanic to put myself through a college. Got my degree, and then she called me and said, "Hey, would you want to work for IMCA someday?" And I'm like, "I don't know, maybe," and she bought it in 1995. In 1997, she called me and said, "Hey, I got a position at IMCA. You want to come to work for us?" And I'm like, "Okay, what am I going to be doing?" And she said, "Marketing." And I'm like, "What?" I don't know anything about marketing. I didn't take marketing classes. I wasn't really interested in that. But I've been able to, since 1997, bring somewhat of the technical aspects, I think, of the race cars and the rule writing and stuff. I think I've been pretty instrumental in some of those decisions. I think, we had like 4 divisions or 5 divisions in 1995, and now we got 9. And yeah, it's been a family affair for me and my mother, my parents, my older sister Debbie, my younger sister Jody, who still works here. My mother officially retired in 2015. I took the ownership of IMCA in 2015, and here I sit. We're kind of like the picture of the American dream, really, to be quite honest, because my mother loved what she did and loved IMCA and still does. And I've got, like I said, I've got dirt track racing in my blood. I can't seem to shake it. I really enjoy what I do. And if you enjoy what you do, you never work a day in your life, they say.
That is true. Thank you very much, Brett. It was a great pleasure to have you on, sharing, your story. And so
registering on EPARTRADE is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to EPARTRADE.